Hello, welcome to the Awakening Report. I'm your host, Doug Hamp. Pleasure to be with you guys again. As always, encourage you to stay in the Word, to look to the Lord, and everything that I say or any teacher of the Bible says, hopefully this will translate into a closer walk with the Lord. May this never just be a time where we get together and we just chat and it just goes in and it's entertainment, but I always want it to be something where it challenges me to walk closer with the Lord, and I hope it challenges you as well. I have a special guest for you today. He's got a great name. His name is Douglas Krieger. I love the first name there, Doug. Hey, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here today, Doug. It's in fact, it's a tremendous to see you again so soon after your premiere performance of the coming Convergence at the Crest Theater here in beautiful downtown Sacramento.
And that was fun. I'm glad we got to connect there.
It's your film. I mean, you're in it.
Well, you know, I had the opportunity to be in a docudrama called The Coming Convergence, put on by Ingenuity Films. They're out of Sacramento, and that was roughly 2 years ago when they did the filming, and lo and behold, they contacted me and said, hey, by the way, we're getting, the movie's coming out. Would you like to come to the premiere? And I thought, this would be a lot of fun. Why not do it? And the extra bonus, the really fun part was I got to hang out with you for a couple of days there, and we just got to chat and talk about prophecy and so many other things. And of course, you blessed me with all of your books. Guys, if you don't know who Doug Krieger is, he is a prolific author, and I mean prolific. And I just want to show you some of his things. So here we are. We're looking at his website. So taking a look here at his site, you can see just got many articles. He's got all kinds of stuff. He's got some talk shows. Doug and Doug. That's not this Doug, but that's Doug Shearer, and you guys can go catch some of those episodes. You can also find him on Amazon, and he has many books. He co-authored some, and he wrote many independently as well. The Final Babylon, that's a great book, by the way, by Doug, Dean, and Doug. So there you go. You got The Two Witnesses, The Testimony of Jesus, Signs of the Heaven and on the Earth, and it is in 2 editions. So you can check those out, and of course, many more. So Doug, tell us, what is going on in your world? What's going on in the prophetic world? We both think that we're close, right?
Yeah, we're really close. In fact, I've been doing some timelines that a lot of your audience, I'm sure, would be fascinated with if they would like to actually participate in some of our action on our Facebook. We have a Facebook page for the TribNet, TribNet 7000. Of course, it's a group page, so you have to be, you either have to join, I have to approve you, or whatever, some of our administrators. And but yeah, I got into, well, we met down in Buena Park. Remember, we had that first conference. I think we met before then. Oh yeah, it was that Prophecy in the News in Colorado Springs, where you were running up and down the halls, just so excited about the new heavens and new earth.
That's right.
And I'm thinking, why is he so excited about that? Big deal, it got to wait 1,000 years before it happens, and then you had this whole thing on the millennium, and I thought it was, I didn't know it was a novel. I thought, where's this guy getting his material? Turns out you had like thousands of verses. And we had a great time at that Prophecy in the News conference. That's when we released the book, The Final Babylon. And we had never met, by the way, we never met Doug Woodward, myself. And so here we write this whole book with him, and we don't meet him till the conference, face to face. So we meet the other author face to face along with everybody else, which was very, very unusual and really exciting too. And so that's when we first connected together and found out that we had a lot in common prophetically, theologically. You were at the time a dyed-in-the-wool Calvary Chapel pre-trib guy, and that was okay. Hey, I rubbed shoulders with all kinds of interesting people. And then slowly but surely, you converted over to a more sane doctrine, but that's okay. I did the same thing. I was a dyed-in-the-wool dispensationalist, and which helps us understand where we're going today. I had, for some time, seeing this relationship between Israel and the elect from among the Gentiles, as we call them, but very few people use that phrase. They use the word the church.
Mm-hmm.
But for lack of, being able to communicate any more clearly, this relationship between Israel and the church, I began to see a whole new theological paradigm that had always bothered me. And I eventually realized that during this time between 2013, when we first, met you, maybe 2012, the end of 2012, and today, that a lot of things have happened. That understanding from the scripture regarding Israel and the church, if you would, and now I can say Judah and Ephraim. I can say, the two houses, the two sticks, the two others, the two witnesses. I could go on and on, which I would dearly like to do, and because I think the elect from among the Gentiles. In fact, we're thinking about having a conference with you in Colorado and calling it until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm excited about that possibility, and we're plotting and planning toward that end, because it is prophetic what's going on between, if you would, again, the church and Israel. And I think that it is a far more, could I just state this from the outset, that there are fundamentally three major paradigms that I see in this relationship between Israel and the church. Relationship one is sort of traditional Roman Catholic theology, Orthodox theology, and eschatology, by the way, as well as Reform eschatology, and that is that the church is looked upon by this paradigm, basically states that the church is the continuing community of God. It replaces it evolves into the church from Israel. Israel is no longer the elect of God. They are very marginalized, and here we are. That paradigm states that there is no separation and there's no distinction between Israel and the church. It's the ongoing community of God. It is the grace of God at work throughout the ages, and it's just ongoing. Then along came the dispensationalists, who saw the distinction between Israel and the church, and then they got involved in the separation. So their particular paradigm completely separates the two in their entirety, and also that there is distinction. So they have distinction, if you would, but they also have separation. Okay. The third paradigm would be that there is distinction. We see distinction because we see in the New Jerusalem that the gates of the city have the names of the 12 tribes of Israel, and the foundations have the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. But, okay, although, there's a new heaven and a new earth, if you would, there is still no separation. There's one city, one bride. And I knew that I was on the wrong track when I started to hear the kind of theology that proposed that there was the wife of Jehovah and that there was the bride of Christ. Well, that threw me, because I knew that my God was not a polygamist. And I can't imagine the marriage supper of the Lamb and some other woman showing up, I can't, this just didn't compute.
Well, let me just interject really quick here, just for people that are just coming on, just to kind of bring people up to speed. What we're talking about is the relationship between the Jews and the church. Okay, and part of what Doug is getting at here is that some of our nomenclature, the terms that we use to define these people, are not clear, and so we often use Israel and the Jews as a synonymous blanket term for each other. But when we go into Scripture, we see that they are not. We see that there's the house of Judah, those are the Jews, and then there's the house of Israel, also known as Ephraim, and they are distinct because there are 12 different tribes. 10 of those were booted out, and so the house of Judah was left. And so now the question is, who is the church? Who is Israel? Or who are the Jews? And so, that's what we're getting at. So, Doug, please go on.
Well, in fact, as I continued in this, the passages in the Revelation about the two witnesses has always stirred within me a desire to know, well, who are they? Well, it says very clearly who they are. It's just whether or not I can break through to understand it. And it said very clearly that the two witnesses are Moses and Elijah. No, it doesn't say that. It says this is what they do, not who they are. And what they do is they have the power to shut up the heavens that it rain not. Well, that sounds like Elijah to me, right? Or they, can turn the water into blood, and they wrought all these plagues. And so it's a major thing. Are you still there?
I'm still here. Yep, I was just showing a screenshot there, so people could kind of see what it is. It's coming out kind of small, unfortunately, but I'm just trying to show what that scripture is so people can see that. Let me see here. Get back to my screen. So yeah, and I will give give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands stand before the God of the earth. All right. So you're right. It doesn't say who they are by name. Okay. So go on. The two witnesses, I think, is a very important doctrine to help us to understand.
Yeah. That particular chapter is, as far as my understanding of the prophecies, is one of the most powerful, I would have to say, enlightening chapters in all prophecy. And it up to probably the last 10 years ago, it was very objective until I looked in the mirror and realized, man, maybe we are one of the two witnesses. Now what do we do, right? And the whole book of Revelation is in a courtroom setting. The judge of all the earth is going to judge the great city, and he has to call forth his witnesses. They're witnessing against the great city, that is, the holy city is, and they're witnessing for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ. That's why John found himself on the isle called Patmos, for that very reason. And so looking at that chapter, it says very clearly that one of the two witnesses are the two lampstands. And so when I count 2 olive trees, 2 lampstands, that's 4. So are my eyes betraying me? So let's do the simple math. If there's 2, why are there 4, right? Well, there are 2, but they are 2 sets of 2. One set as a testimony of God's faithfulness on the earth to the Jews, to Israel, if you would, on the earth, and the other as the 2 olive trees, and the other are the 2 lampstands. Now, at the end of Revelation chapter 1, I believe verse 21, it says that the 7 churches are the 7 lampstands. If you look at the last verse in Revelation chapter 1, it will be very clearly seen that the word lampstand in Greek is louchnia, and that word louchnia reappears as 2, not 7, when you get to Revelation chapter 11.
Let me read that for people. The mystery of the 7 stars which you saw in my right hand, and the 7 golden lampstands. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands which you saw are the 7 churches. And the word there is louchnia. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So what you see there in Revelation chapter 1, you see that the Son of Man stands in the midst of the 7 churches like a giant candelabra, if you would. And they're all golden. They're all perfect in him. But, there's a few things against some of them. and he goes to each of the churches and talks to them, speaks to that church in Asia Minor. But to say that the church does not appear from Revelation 4 on, when John goes up through heaven in a door, is a total misnomer, because there are many ways to express the saints, the brethren, and the lampstands alone. So the word Luchnia reappears in Revelation 11 as a witness. God has his witness, and he is witnessing through the church in the very midst of this confusion and what have you, and the final week of human history. So the church and Israel are there. Israel maybe even in unbelief, the Jews even in unbelief, okay?
I just want to just clarify that. So you're saying that the word luchne in Revelation 1:20, therefore lampstand, we see that in Revelation 11 as the lampstand. So you're saying that there's a connection linguistically and, of course, theologically as well.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And probably the best way to put it is that there are many, as we know, and it used to be including myself, that the church doesn't show up till at the end of Revelation, chapter 20, 21, whatever, right? And so there's nothing of the church from Revelation 4 on. That's not true.
Okay. And that's the dispensational model. The dispensational
Yes.
model says, we get whisked out of here 7 years before the return of Jesus at the beginning of the tribulation. Those who are left are all the unrighteous people, the unsaved, etc. And then you get some tribulation saints, etc. But you're suggesting no, that there is no pre-trib rapture, and it's the same continuum of the church.
Yeah, I mean, they're there, and I would like to use this illustration because it's very, very fascinating for me to see the fact that it says that these two witnesses have, in the main, an unmitigated authority was given to them for 1,260 days, which is 3.5 years, which is 1/2 of the 70th week, and then after, I think it's in verse 7. That after they've given their testimony, remember, he's on the Isle of Patmos for the testimony of Jesus. What is their testimony? Well, their testimony is about the Messiah and the deliverance that we have in Messiah. That's the testimony. Okay, it's the testimony of Yeshua, right? And so, but after they give this testimony, then the beast from the abyss, first mentioning of the beast, comes up out of the bottomless pit, right? Which sounds like in the middle of the week to me. And then it says their body lies in the street of the great city, which is not Jerusalem. I'm sorry, Chris White. I love you, but I'm not going to go there. But I'm just saying that great city is not Jerusalem. Okay. The great city throughout the book of Revelation is the Babylon the Great. The holy city is trampled asunder for how many months, Doug? 42
months. That's right.
Right, 42 months.
Yep.
And so we have to see the parallels in these passages, that the 42 months is the same time as the 3.5 days that their body, actually singular, corpse, their body or carcass, singular again, which connotes a corporate expression, even with the two. Okay, if you look in the Greek, you're going to see that it's singular. Body, okay, lies in the street of the great city for how many days? Everybody says, well, 3 days. No, 3.5 days. Mentions it twice, I believe, in verse 9 and verse 11.
Okay.
So you want to read that?
Yeah, but after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and terror struck those who saw them.
Precisely. Then it says it again. It says 3.5 days twice, right? And so that's the 42 months. That's the latter half of the 70th week. Okay, so the first half, 1,260 days, it's this, if you would, the testimony. And then the last half is, you're in the grave. But what does it say after the And by the way, everybody's excited about this. They're exchanging gifts and slapping each other, giving each other high fives. But we finally got rid of these two guys who did what? Tortured us.
Maybe this is at Christmas time.
Yep, right. These guys tortured us. So I asked the brothers and sisters in the Lord, who have you tortured lately? Right? Who have you tortured lately? If you haven't tortured somebody, I mean, that's a pretty heavy word there, isn't it?
Sure.
And I'm just saying this, that after the 3.5 days, they hear a voice that says to them, what? Come up here. Right? Can you see it?
Yep.
Go down a little bit, take it a little bit up there, and I think you're going to see it. Ah, yeah.
Yep. Come up here.
It says, come up here.
Yep.
Right? And so to me, that's when, you know, if anybody wants a rapture, there's your rapture. But here's what I'm getting at. When Jesus came into Jerusalem riding on that donkey, fulfilling Zechariah chapter 9, I believe, verse 9 and 10, when he came in on the 10th of Nisan, he came in to give testimony. He cleaned out the money changers from the temple. He bore witness, okay, against all the hypocrisy and against all the problems that were going on. Praise God. And so what happened is that Peter says, you're not going. He says, I'm going. You want to come along with me? Hey, you can. But hey, I like the first part. Man, I can join this. So, I mean, everybody's waving palm branches and everything. Hey, I'm all in. You know, if I'm going to be a Navy SEAL, don't give me the bad news. Give me all the excitement first before I join, right? And so it's like we give this unmitigated testimony for 3.5 days, for 1,260 days, if you would. Just as Jesus. This is his Passion Week.
So who are the? Because here's what we haven't gotten to yet. Who, in your opinion, are the witnesses?
The witnesses happen to be the church, as we understand it, the elect called out from among the Gentiles, whose witness is primarily to principalities and powers, as Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6. So we're taking on the heavens. But guess who the gates are for? The gates of the New Jerusalem are for the nations. And so Israel is if you would, Judah has been gathered back in the land as according to the prophecies. And guess what's happening? The whole world is focused this week on the 15th, in 2 more days, on guess who? Israel. They're making decisions. The 70 nations, according to Genesis 10, they can't get over 70. They keep saying there's 70. All right. And they're going to decide on a Palestinian state. We know this. But like Psalm chapter 2 says, why do the Gentiles, the nations, the heathen rage? And they imagine a very vain thing. And they plot against the Lord and against his Messiah. They've gathered against, quote, Israel. They've gathered against Judah. And now they've got something on their hands. But that's all taking place where? On the earth, if we understand that. Now, when John chapter 1 comes on the scene, and this is what we shared way back in the day in Buena Park, is that ladder that Jacob saw, where the angels were ascending and descending on Jacob's ladder, right? You know, Jesus told Nathanael after he said, well, you're the Son of God, you know. And then Jesus said, you say Son of God, I say you're going to see greater things than these, Nathanael. You're going to see the angels ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Okay, it's when he became a man that there was this connection between heaven and earth. Jesus bridges the gap between the two.
I like
Isn't that beautiful?
It really is. I mean,
he's
this I don't know how to put it, but kind of this cosmic, you know, just he can exist in 2 dimensions, right? Or
yes, absolutely.
You know, obviously not two different states, right? He can be in the other worldly dimension. He can be in this dimension, and he's bridging that gap. I think that's beautiful because,
And
you know,
and he comes,
that's
and
really
by the
what's
way,
happening.
he comes back
Yeah.
as the Son of Man, because he brings God to man, and if you would, he brings man back into God. So when you have a new heaven and a new earth, it's connected by the Son of Man. Now here's the thing, and this is why I'm excited about this. It's so beautiful because he's bringing the two dimensions together. So when you're looking at the holy district of Ezekiel, I don't want to go too fast for everybody here, but fast enough just to stir you up. There's this holy district. So you see a holy city, you see a sanctuary, you see the Levite priests, you see all these different things in Ezekiel 40 through 48. And then you see the New Jerusalem descending. Like, when does that happen? The bride is taken up, okay, and then we come back, and okay, where are we? Well, you know, back in the day, I asked Dr. John Wolbert from Dallas Seminary face to face. I said, John, we were friends and associates. I said, John, I don't see the New Jerusalem hanging around the earth in the stratosphere as a kind of a Death Star, you know, with the bride up there and twirling around, and then all this stuff with Jews down on the earth, and the Son of David reigning on his throne. Where's the groom with the bride twirling around as a Death Star? Does he go back and forth? There was never a clear answer.
Right.
And so I decided, well, if this thing is descending, to where does it descend? Right to the stratosphere.
Right.
And then after 1,000 years, we come into the eschaton. Then I met Doug Hamp. And he said, no, the new heavens and the new earth kick off right at the beginning of the millennium. Well, that fit perfectly into my concern. And so Doug opened my eyes to that. You really did. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, yes, 2 Peter 3 is just so clear to me. You know, and I come from a Missouri Synod Lutheran background. I found out the Missouri Synod Lutherans believe the new heaven and the new earth takes place as soon as Jesus comes back. It's great. I'm right in there with the Lutherans now. So the beauty of this is the fact that it is multidimensional. The holy district of Ezekiel and the New Jerusalem. I know it's hard to comprehend this, but it really, hey, if we can have string theory and 11 different dimensions, we can certainly have 2 dimensions, and yet it is one. Okay, it is one. And so it is one expressed differently, but mathematically, which is my background, I have no problem with it. It all fits mathematically as well. That's another whole story. And so it's exciting to see this come together. So we have in the church and in Israel a terminology crisis that we're going to get through.
Let me just take a second and show people where this is in the text that really solidifies what you're saying. In 2 Kings chapter 6, we have Elisha and his servant here, and they wake up one morning, and the servant says, because they're surrounded by the Syrian army, he says, "Oh my Lord, what shall we do?" The servant asks. He says, "Don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked, and he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So this is that multi-dimensional reality that you're talking about that is going to be, and we don't know exactly how it's going to pan out, right? But we know that there's basically one dimension sandwiched upon this one, okay? And we can only really, for the most part, gain access to the one that we're in today. You know, I think it's possible through drugs and, you know, other means that we probably shouldn't do. But, you know, or unless you're a very enlightened person like a prophet, then we really can't see that other dimension. But it is possible. It is possible to see that dimension here in this life before checking out. When you check out, you'll definitely get there. So go ahead.
Well, I'm saying that when the Son of Man comes in glory, right? That wall that has separated these dimensions between the heavens and the earth, between the unseen and the seen, is bridged by the physicality, the materiality, if you would, Jesus is not just a spirit. He said, hey, reach your hand over here, Thomas, and feel me. Okay, why was he doing that? Because it's that materiality in the Son of Man that brings the two dimensions totally together on that day. And so it is in Messiah, the deliverer, that we are brought together as this multidimensional barrier that is separated us is broken once and for all at his coming again in glory. And that's when they're going to have a renewed heaven and a renewed earth where righteousness dwells. And all those verses, you're right, Doug, only can make sense at the commencement of the 1,000-year rule and reign of the Son of David. And so I'm just excited that God has opened our eyes to this, and that we're going to see a lot more of this come about. We've seen that Jerusalem would be trodden underfoot of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And then we see that there is the fullness of the Gentiles, is when the last Gentile has come in, and then all Israel is saved. What an expression that is, right? And then, hey, the deliverer will come out of Zion, oddly enough, right?
Yep.
And he's going to deliver. And then the third thing is, but look out, because the court of the Gentiles, which is in Revelation 11, stomps around on the holy city for 42 months, which is highly symbolic that God's witnesses are going to have to confront for 42 months the beast and the treading underfoot of the holy city. Now, I know that a lot of people are saying, hey, it says two, and that two means two. But what do you want, X-Men? You want a reincarnation of Moses come back here? Well, no, maybe it's Enoch and Elijah because they never died. Okay, I want to know this. Why is it that Jesus and James both say that Elijah shut up the heavens, that it didn't rain for 3.5 years, 3 years, 6 months? You go to the book of Kings, you can't find 3 years, 6 months. You can only find 3 years. Then Ahab pleads, don't take me, man. Elijah says, okay, you can hang around again. And then it says there was peace between Ahab and Syria for 3 years. That's the other 3.5 years, if you would. And then when does Elijah go up in the fiery chariot? When is Elijah raptured? At the end of this 7-year time frame. So if you want to get literal, there's your type, right? And then along comes Elisha, right? And Elisha deals with the 42 months when he wipes out the 42 lads with the 2 female bears. Remember? And then so he deals with that, and then he deals with the 42 sons of King Ahaziah. And so, bam, there's your 2 sets of 42 again. And so the beast is going to reign for 42 months. The court of the Gentiles is going to persecute the holy city for 42 months. And both sets of these 42 are dealt with in the book of Kings after Elijah's taken up in a fiery chariot. It's really amazing, that there would be 2 sets of 42. All I'm saying is we just can't gloss over that it has nothing to do with what's happening in the Revelation. It has everything to do with what's happening in the Revelation. But listen to this. Jesus,
well, let me just recap.
Went all the way to the cross.
So just to recap really quick here, the 2
right.
witnesses you're suggesting are the 2 houses. Is that right? That you have the house of Judah.
Our corporate beings, 2 houses.
Okay, so the house of Judah, house of Israel. The house of Israel, also known as Ephraim, was scattered to the world.
Yes.
And now they're coming back how?
Well, they're coming back very simply because in spirit, this thing is a spiritual warfare thing going on here. When the Lord spoke to Abraham and to Isaac and Jacob that they would become a multitude of nations, that phrase translates over into the Greek or even the Septuagint, okay, that this has to do, the fullness of the Gentiles means the multitude of nations, a company of nations. Now, where are these company of nations? Where'd they go? Okay. I talked with top Israeli scholars who are always running around looking for the 10 lost tribes. They were sitting in the car with one of them. And I said, wait a minute. That which was lost has now been found. The father comes out to the prodigal when he comes to himself. And I believe those two sons are from the same house. But the one blew his inheritance. And he was carted off in 722 BC to Assyria, most of whom were scattered among all the nations. They just went every which way. And so these scholars in Israel were trying to find out, where's the DNA? Maybe it's in Tibet. Maybe it's in, some weird place on the planet. But in point of fact, when Jesus was on the earth, where did he go? He went to Galilee of the Gentiles, right? And if you look at the allocations in the millennium as to where the tribe of Ephraim winds up, it winds up holding all the land around the Sea of Galilee. It's pretty astonishing. Okay, and so when Jesus gets up at the synagogue and states, hey, there were a lot of widows in Israel, but where did Elijah go? He went to the widow of Zarephath, up along the Phoenicians, a Gentile. And there were all kinds of lepers, but where did Jesus go? He went to Naaman. Elijah goes to Naaman. And so we're getting the message. In other words, this whole thing about you, Jesus, and the Gentiles, there's something going on there. We don't see it. And he said, other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. I'm going to get them. Okay? Those are the ones who are lost among the Gentiles. They become the nations. And he's bringing them in, the elect from among the Gentiles.
You're not talking about a specific person who's stuck in a specific country and he just needs to get back home. You're talking about a blending of the DNA, essentially. You're talking about an intermarriage, interracial.
It would have to be that. It would have to be that. In other words, let's say that, okay, I'm looking at you and I'm going, well, does he have any Ephraim DNA? Or maybe God knows, and he just happened to get Doug Hamp saved somehow and Doug Krieger saved somehow. And, I've done my DNA thing and I'm 100% German. Grief. Ashkenazi, could be that this guy's, part Ephraim, I'm not going to get into British Israelism. I am saying this. Isaac is a type of Christ. Everybody admits to that because he was offered up as a sacrifice. The ram showed up in the bush, and Abraham. Okay, but it's a picture of who Jesus was, right? And is. Now, what happened is that the promise was given to Isaac that he would be his seed would be many nations. So when you get to Galatians 3 and 4, it's very clear that this promise is that we are all sons of promise by Isaac. It says very clearly in Galatians chapter 4. And so we've become that multitude of nations in the seed, which is Christ. So when we're in Messiah, when we're in the anointed, we're in the good land. I don't know if you caught that. We are already in the good land. And the thing about Isaac was, he says, I'm out of here. God, I'm taking off. There's a famine in the land. I'm heading down to Egypt. And God comes to Isaac, 25, 26 over there in Genesis, says, you're not going anywhere. You're my type. You're in the land. You're not going. Well, Abraham, he came from here and he's going there and up to Haran and all that. No, you're in the land. Now, Jacob, as soon as he steals the birthright, 30 years later, after this promise is made to Isaac, he heads off to Haran, all right, where he gets, Leah and the whole thing, right? And what I'm saying here is that's where the sojourn begins. As soon as he stole the thing from Esau, he bailed out of there, right? And he was gone. And then he comes back, and eventually he winds up in Egypt. So you're talking a 400-year sojourn. There's 430 years of the promise, which is set in Galatians and also in Genesis 12. This is the promise, and or the sojourn. So those 430 years and the 400 years fit perfectly in the Bible, One has to do with promise. The other one has to do with birthright, Okay, and so you see these two working. One is in the seed, capital SEED, where we are, right? And then the other one has to do with the birthright. So I believe that God is giving us really some outstanding insight into the scriptures. We are just on the cusp of this. I mean, this is just beginning to open up to us. And we need the grace of God with one another and with our brothers and sisters in the Lord to continue to explore this, to understand the profound meaning of this at the close of this age, that we know that he made of the two one new man, Galatians. We know that it's a new creation. We know it's one body. Through the cross, this is possible. It's only through the cross that this is possible. Yeah.
So what we're saying here, what you're saying is that you got two houses, right? We know that they were divided in 922 BC.
Right.
The northern kingdom of Ephraim, which was the 10 tribes, they were
722 BC. Yeah.
722. Well, they were divided in 922, right? Or 923 or something.
Yeah.
Then they were sent away.
It was a little bit later. Yeah. Go ahead.
You know, then they were sent away from the land in 722. God had the Assyrians come and take them away.
Oh yeah, they were separated back in 9-something. Yes.
Yeah. So they were one nation, then became two nations in 922 approximately, and then you have the actual divorce and separation happening of the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, which is the vast majority of the entire people of Israel. Right? It's the vast majority here, right? And God just leaves a tiny little remnant, you know, for because of David's sake, right? He leaves them in the south, and that they're all that's left. Okay,
that's right.
And I think a lot of the confusion comes because, again, we use these terms interchangeably. We say Jews, Israel, Israel, Jews, right? And obviously one is related to the other, but it's like saying that all Americans are Californians. I mean, that's just not true, right? Go say that in a bar in Texas, and I bet they'll, you know, knock some sense into you.
You'll have some issues.
What'd you call me? Right? Don't you dare call me a Californian.
I would say you will have issues.
Right. He goes out and gets his shotgun. So, you know, so it's not right to say that all Israel are the Jews, right? And I think that has created a lot of confusion for us because all that we see today are the Jewish people, and you know, they are all that is left, you know, physically, or they're all that's left that we can see. Let's put it that way, of Israel. But they're not all of Israel, right? They're only one part of Israel, right? Yeah, they're essentially
a portion of the whole. And I think the clarity of this, not to interrupt anything, but if we go into Ezekiel 37 prophetically, we've always understood the valley of dry bones, but after about verse 15, it starts talking not about this mighty army that's being raised up, that's being gathered, quote, in unbelief, but he's breathing life into them. Now, what's all that about? And then it starts talking about the two sticks. And before the Gog-Magog war, I mean, enough of this. I'm getting confused, right? Like, what is this thing about the two sticks? We just completely glossed over that. Gone from the valley of dry bones, and now we're at the Gog-Magog war. That's more exciting. No! What's really exciting is taking the two sticks of the house of Judah and the house of Ephraim through Joseph and making them one stick.
That's right. So we've got the business. That's right. So here in the beginning of chapter 37, we've got the Valley of Dry Bones. That's all exciting. By the way, the entire prophecy of Ezekiel was directed not to the house of Judah. It was directed to the house of Israel. Okay.
There we go.
It's really amazing. Chapter 3, it talks about that. Okay, so here he says, "Son of man, take a stick of wood and write on it belonging to Judah and the Israelites associated with him. Then take another stick of wood and write on it belonging to Joseph, that is to Ephraim, and all the Israelites associated with him. Join them together into one stick so that they'll become one in your hand. When your people ask, won't you tell us what you mean by this? Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says."
By the way, we're asking God that right now.
What does this mean?
You mean by this?
He says, I would take the stick of Joseph, that is Ephraim's hand. Again, that's the northern Israelites, right? And of the Israelite tribes associated with him, and join it to Judah's stick. I will make them into a single stick of wood, and they will become one in my hand. Behold, hold before their eyes the sticks you've written on them, and say to them, this is the sovereign Lord's. I will take the Israelites out of the nations where they've gone. I will gather them from around and
The
all
world.
around and bring them back into their land. That's the rapture, by the way, right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
That's it. We're in.
Yep. That is the rapture right there. And I'll make
what's he
them
going
one
to do? He's
nation
going to
in
make
the
them
land.
what?
One
What
nation.
nation?
Yep.
In the land. Now,
Yeah.
see, this is so multidimensional. It's mind-numbing. See, we can't think in these terms. I mean, because hey, we have hundreds of millions of Christians out there who are this stick of Ephraim called up. Okay, when you go to Acts 15 at the so-called First Church Council, right, Doug? That is the most remarkable passage. Because the Christians from Jewish backgrounds were trying to figure out through Paul and Silas, what have you, what's this thing about the Gentiles? You're the apostle to the Gentiles. Paul even claimed to be that, right? And he says, so what's going on here? And then, James gets up and says, well, this all makes sense. I will what? I will restore again the tabernacle of David. Well, what's the tabernacle of David got to do with what Paul's doing? And he says, and I will call out from among the Gentiles a people for my name. And this is Amos. This is all being fulfilled. Folks, this is all justified by Scripture. What Paul and Silas are doing is right on. Isn't that amazing?
It is. It's amazing.
it's so you got this. Yeah, go ahead.
And well, we've generally missed it. Not everybody, but most of us have missed this in Protestant evangelicalism, and I would probably the Catholic Church as well. We've just not seen this. This has been something where, as you were saying at the beginning, you either kind of go to this extreme of dispensationalism where you have this massive bifurcation, this distinction, and the two can never touch. It's kind of like my kids when they were little, that the two different foods could not touch on the same plate. Somehow that bothers every kid around the world. The food can't touch, and that's kind of the same idea that Israel and the church, they just can't touch, right? Whereas really what's happening is you've had the house of Judah that's always been there. They have not left. And you even made reference to the prodigal son, the story of the prodigal son.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, when you and I were sharing a meal together and you talked about that, I was kind of blown away because I'm like, wow, that's pretty advanced. I heard that from somebody else, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago. And I got pretty excited about that. And I was really excited to hear you share that same thing, that, really the older son that never left, that's the house of Judah.
Yes, it is.
And what do? They complain, hey, Dad, we never got to do any of this stuff.
Yeah, what's up with
why
this,
don't you show us a good time? He's like, you guys, you've always been here.
Right.
You just didn't take advantage of what I gave you, right? And you decided to whine and complain about it and be, all of this thing of, well, God's not doing anything for us. Dad doesn't like us that much, right? And you were sourpuss about it. But then the son that comes back that had gone and squandered everything, crime. They were the ones that got completely messed up in the world. All right, they were far worse off than the older brother, because they'd forgotten all the instructions the father said. They completely disregarded. And so here this son comes back. He's welcomed by the father, and then the older son gets jealous, right? The older brother.
Yes.
So it's an amazing. But
they have
picture.
The celebration eventually in the house, right?
That's right.
That's what we're looking forward to. But let's substantiate this more, Doug, because I think it's really critical to understand that the two sticks are in his hand, and he is in charge of bringing them together. Now, speaking about Ephraim is this: Joshua and Caleb are just the perfect picture of this. They go into the land. And they go, wow, we can take these guys. Okay, they come back, and so the name of Joshua is really Hoshua. How do you say it in Hebrew?
Yehoshua.
Yehoshua. So Yehoshua eventually, becomes transliterated and eventually becomes anglicized as Jesus. Okay, now what tribe was Yehoshua from? Which is really interesting. He's from the tribe of Ephraim. Okay, and who's Caleb? He's from the tribe of Judah. Hello, people. Come on. Who goes into the land? Who goes into the land? Joshua and Caleb are the only ones who make it into the land in that sense, right? They're the only ones who get in. Oh, praise God. They are the picture, absolutely, of Judah and Ephraim. And then, Joshua, he, settles in Ephraim, right? When he gets into the land, his portion's there. And I do believe that the tabernacle of David was, in the city of David for some 33 years, awaiting the temple's construction, right? And so this is a picture of it was wide open. Anybody could go in. There was no veil, right? And you could partake and you could dance. And it was a 24/7, worship thing going on there. Is that right? I believe so. And so I will restore again the tabernacle of David. Hey, so we're all together, man. It's wide open. He's broken. There's no veil. We're ready to go with the Ark of the Covenant. There it is. So anyway, that's a long story there. But all these types and shadows, we've just completely, we haven't seen it. We've tried to keep these guys separate. And yet the whole purpose of the cross is that to break that barrier down. Right?
Isn't that amazing?
So this is
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we're excited about this. I can't imagine why, but we are very excited about this.
We're excited because it opens up. It just opens up all the scriptures. I mean, we've had so many Bible difficulties of like, well, how does this work out? And then because we come up with a certain paradigm, and then we kind of run with that for a century or two. It creates this kind of weird theologies like Calvinism, for example, where you have the frozen chosen, where God just happened to choose people before the foundation of the world, and that's all you can do about it. And if you weren't one of those chosen, you're going to hell. And I'm so sorry. That's just all there is to it.
Look at this thing about and he's a dear and these are dear brothers in the Lord. John Piper is a very precious brother. Okay, there's no question about it. But today he looks at that thing on the eastern edge of the Mediterranean and says, hey, there's no special thing that God has with these people. That was dealt with by the cross. Hello. Okay. All I'm saying is, then why are they there? Well, here's how it goes. They're the great city. They're the great Babylonian whore, some people say. Okay. They are an aberration. They are an apostate. They are the synagogue of Satan. Okay, and on we go. Now, the church has gotten into this thing throughout the last 2,000 years. All I'm saying is, guess what? God's going to take these two sticks, and he's going to make them one. This is God who's doing this. Now, another picture is Joseph. We all know that. He's a picture of Christ as well. It's taught everywhere, right? He was rejected by his brethren. He went into the pit and had the coat of many colors, and he bore upon him the sins of the world. And he goes down into Egypt, and he's been down in Egypt. Now look at it. They have a meal, and the Egyptians sat on one side, and the Hebrews sat on the other. And who was in the middle? Joseph. And do you think that the Egyptians really understood Joseph in fullness? Think about it. They don't know that he's connected to his brothers. They don't know this. Now, the brothers are sitting over here, and all they see is that Joseph is connected to the Egyptians. Now, think about this. They only see his relationship with the Egyptians. They don't see his relationship with them. That's so powerful. Neither one of these guys, isn't that wonderful? They're looking at this and they're going, hey, we don't have anything to do with these unclean people over here. Imagine the Hebrews, unclean people, right? We have nothing to do with them. And we're sitting over here with our bald heads, and we're looking at Joseph, and we all think we know him. Okay? And so the brothers, they know Joseph only in his relationship to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians only know Joseph in his relationship to them. Okay? So on that day, when does that day happen? Jesus says, do you not know in John 11 that there are 12 hours in a day? I thought there were 24. Well, he says 12. So now watch this. So if there's only 12 hours in a day, then if we did that, then there would be 2 sets of 12 in one 24-hour time frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in 3.5, there would be 7, right? 7 12-hour segments, right? Now watch this. So Joseph is over there, and for 7 years of plenty, that's like the 7 days, right? 7 12-hour time frames. Then there were 7 years of famine, and it was in the famine that Joseph disclosed himself to his brethren, and consequently to the Egyptians, both of whom thought they knew who this guy was.
Hmm.
What a mystery, huh? And so he puts them all together in the crucible of the famine. And what I'm saying here is this: you got 7 and 7, yes, but you have 3.5, 3.5 at the same time. So if you follow me, okay, mathematically, and Jesus said there's 12 hours in a day. So I'm saying that 7 is the first half of the week, and the second half of the week is as the 7 years of famine and the testing and the trotting asunder for 42 months and the 3.5 days of open persecution and suffering that brings you ultimately into resurrection and into the rapture. Okay, and then God pours out his judgment. This is, I believe, the full testimony and the bringing together of both houses. And so
Wow.
God has been working on us Egyptians, if you would, the picture, right? But I like the Ephraim stick much better. But both of them are fantastic.
It's a good segue because Jason Myers is asking, he says, you know, speaking of the new book that you just wrote with Chad Schaefer.
Yeah, Chad Schaefer, yeah.
Yeah, he says, you know, what are your thoughts on, has the entire world been made Egypt?
Yes, in that sense, the whole world and the world system is that we are under the bondage of Egypt. And let me continue that with Revelation 11.
Cool.
Where do the bodies lie in open persecution? The body. Where does it lie? In the street of the great city, which is also called what? Sodom and Egypt. Yes, Egypt is there with all of its allure, all of its culture, all of its bondage, all of its deception. Yes. And that's the world that we face. We're all under that bondage. And
so in a sense, we shouldn't see that in a strict literal sense, but we should see that as a type or a spiritual truth, or I mean, obviously that's what Revelation's doing. It's saying Jerusalem in that sense, spiritually, right? Even they come out and say it spiritually is Sodom and Egypt. So taking that principle, we can also say that spiritually, just kind of taking that same principle there, spiritually Egypt as a type has been put upon the entire world. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Without a question, unequivocally, that is exactly what happened. And the beauty is this, okay? God brought Sodom, his family, Lot, out of Sodom, right, before he judged it. Okay? So in that sense, he waited to the very end. The fire was coming down. He got out, right? So his wrath, with regards to his wrath upon Sodom and Gomorrah, was, he spared the righteous ones, okay? Then when you go to Egypt, it's the Exodus. Okay, so you have but they were there for the plagues. Israel was there. They went through that. Okay, he protected them. He covered them. And then, of course, the Passover, was instituted at the most critical time. And they were delivered, every one of them. And this is what's going to happen to us. The second Exodus, which we write about in the book, the world under the bondage of Egypt. If you get a chance to get that book, I would highly recommend it, by Chad Schaefer and Doug Krieger. I started in the book with Brother Chad when he gave me his text And I thought, what's this guy talking about? You know, I can't, you know, what's the big deal about these triumphal arches all over the world, you know? And the more we got into it, the more we saw, and I wound up being a co-author. It was the craziest thing. And man, it was really crazy. But I gave the book to my associate, Dean McGriff. He says, hey, Krieger, this is the best book that I've read in years. And the guy's a voracious reader, right? And he said, this is the best book I've seen for a long, long time. Where did you guys get this stuff? And I said, must have been from the throne of God, because when I first got into it was a quagmire. And it just sucked me in, and eventually IR won. So, but anyway, I really encourage everybody to get that book. It's selling very well now. It's I think it's number 55 in commentaries. So it's really a commentary, but yet it's very current, because we deal with the Baal Arch and the Arch of Triumph that was Servetus, who was an emperor in the 200s, built his arch at the Baal complex in Palmyra, Syria. And of course, ISIS has gone in there to blow that up. And they blew up the Arch of Triumph and did not blow up the Arch of Baal. Now, they may have gone back to blow up the Arch of Baal. Okay, they're determined to blow up both arches. They have no idea what they're doing, right? So the people at the United Nations and Antiquities are just freaked out. So they decided, hey, we're going to, as a result of this, make these arches all over the world in 1,000 places as replicas of the arches that were destroyed. They've got this technology. They're going to be able to do it. So in London, in Trafalgar Square, they initially were going to place the Arch of Baal, but instead they did not. That's a square arch, okay? It's a square arch, okay? But they decided to put the Arch of Titus, because there was such an outcry against something honoring Satan, which is Baal, really, quite frankly. Okay, so we got to deal with this. And so a lot of Christians rose up and said, you can't do this. So in Trafalgar Square, they did a replica of the triumphal arch of Titus, which was what Emperor Servetus did in 200 or so AD in Palmyra. Okay, and so that triumphal arch is very significant because it has to do with the Jews, has to do with Judah. And it was Titus who, destroyed Jerusalem to the ground, impacted it with salt and wiped out the sanctuary. And, then from there, they took at least over 20,000 of the top Jews of Judea and moved them to Alexandria. And from Alexandria, they then took them across the Mediterranean to Rome, where they built the triumphal arch of Titus and were forced to walk underneath it. And so now there's a rabbinical curse that no Jews can walk under the triumphal arch of Titus or under any of these arches.
Wow.
I don't know if you knew that. You don't walk under that. And so think about it. If you ever go to Italy, brother, are you going to walk under that arch? Just think about it.
Well, I did already, so I guess it's too late. But
you were in Italy and you walked under the arch.
Well, it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. I don't know.
I mean, that's what arches are for, to walk underneath, right?
It was just some interesting history to me. That's all it was. Yeah.
And anyway, that arch was built and dedicated in about 82 AD. So some years after, about 11, 12 years after the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD by Titus and primarily the Roman 10th Legion. And so that's all covered in this book. So there's a lot of history about the arches, and there's a lot of history as to the first Exodus and now the second Exodus. And like I said, my latest thing about the 4 sets of 400, the 430 years of promise to law in Exodus, the 400 years of the sojourn from Jacob to law and Exodus, and then from the Exodus and law, 50 days later, the law, to 450 years, and in the 14th year of King David's reign, that's the 450 years. I took them out with a strong hand from Egypt. We never read that. That's when the Exodus took place. And then it goes all the way to 450 years of the judges to Samuel. And that's when you get the fact that 480 years from 1 Kings 6:1 unto the 4th year of Solomon's reign, which is 30 years less, is 450. And so, but both of those, 450 and 480, are placed from the Exodus and law. So everything is centered on that part of history, which I believe took place in 1445 BC. But the 4 sets of 400 have now been revealed. Mm. And we know that it's all centered in the Exodus, and it comes out of that Exodus and law. It comes out on both sides, and it's glorious, that it all fits together like a glove. It's just amazing. And we now have that's all.
Well, and of course, I think what's important for people to understand here is that, both you and I have been studying the Bible for a very long time. You obviously longer than me. You're definitely a first-rate scholar. And what you've had to do is to adjust your theology to fit the Bible. And I think what happens is that so often is we're trying to make the Bible adjust to fit our theology. And we've got it backwards most of the time. And we always have to be flexible enough to say, wait a second, what I thought was true, what has been handed down to me is not real. It's not reality of what God has been teaching. Right. And a lot of times, I mean, it's not like any of us are trying to believe the wrong thing. We're not trying to teach the wrong thing.
Right.
But, that's just the package we were handed. It made sense, and it's taken us sometimes many years to unravel some of this knot that we've been handed and say, well, wait a second, I think it actually goes a little better over here. Sometimes I think of it like a jigsaw puzzle that, we're both very much indebted to the men and women that have gone before us and have put a lot of the puzzle together, right? I mean, we're really just very blessed that they have come and they said, well, look, at this part of salvation fits right over here. It looks pretty good, all right? And this part of, eternal life, it's over here, and sola scriptura, and faith, grace by through faith, and so all of those things are very, very important. But when we look at the whole puzzle itself, we see that there are some pieces that are they're not going to work, and if we try to fit them, then we got this other piece that's going to fit wrong over here. And only when we're willing to switch those out and say, oh my goodness, now they fit, and now all the pieces around them can fit. And I think that's what has happened, is that we get into this thing where we think the puzzle is the way it is, and who am I to touch it, right?
Yes.
And we just want it because we don't have the actual box to look at, right? So we're trying to put this thing together, and we have to be flexible to say, okay, we missed it on the 2 houses. It wasn't clear to us, but now it is. Now the puzzle fits so much better, and probably in a couple years, we'll get another piece of the puzzle. Suddenly we'll just, break out.
Here's the way it works. See how I'm holding this cup? See how the whole is?
Yes.
So it's really easy to take it out of my hand. But if I'm holding it like this, then I got a grip on this thing, right? And this is what happens to us theologically. We get it, just like you're saying. We get into a mold, a rut, and we get an institution, and we institutionalize it, and we don't realize that Daniel 12, verse 4 in the Amplified Version. You don't have the Amplified Version. You want to show that verse? Daniel 12, 4 from the Amplified Version. Because that is such a key to what's happening to Doug Hamp and Doug Krieger as we sit here glaring at our computer screens. Okay, this is what is really happening.
Okay, let me pull that up. I've got Daniel 12.
And I want everybody to see this, because this was such a revelation to myself. My sister and I were sitting around a coffee table, and this verse came up, and it just blew our minds.
Okay.
In the Amplified.
I don't know if I have the Amplified here.
You have
this
Gateway?
Is Bible Hub. That's Bible Hub.
Okay. And probably don't have the Amplified. If you have a Bible Gateway, you can put in there and go to Amplified, Classic Amplified, and let's see. No, it's done so well in the Amplified. It's really wonderful.
Okay, I guess. All right, let me just go there.
Yeah, go to Bible Gateway. because I want everybody to see this verse and realize what's really happening here.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, just put in on this side over here where it says search for amplified version. Yeah. And I know that some people have a revulsion on the amplified, but boy, right here it is really good.
Okay, Amplified Bible.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's go to Daniel 12.
Verse 4.
All right, there it
There
is.
you go.
Okay, so verse 4, here it is. But as for you, Daniel, conceal these words and seal up the scroll until the time of to the end of time. Many will go back and forth and search anxiously through the scroll, and knowledge of the purpose of God as revealed by his prophets will greatly increase.
Okay. Now that is a completely different take than Hal Lindsey. Bless that brother.
That's true.
And we're not talking about computers and exponential issues with regards to just general knowledge. Okay. But at the end of time, many will go back and forth and search anxiously through the book, the scroll, and knowledge of the purposes of God as revealed by his prophets. This is knowledge of the purposes of God, what God is really after. It has nothing to do with, the purpose-driven life. What is God's purpose for your life? No, it is what is God's purpose for God? Line up with God's purpose and you'll find your purpose in life as revealed by the prophets. It's already there. And so, and it's going to become great and increase. So we're living in the end of time. You believe we're living in the end of time, brother? I do. I mean, we're there, baby. And guess what's happening? Knowledge of what God is after is increasing and becoming. How's it doing that? Because you and I and a bunch of other guys are going like crazy through the book, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, anxiously.
Yeah. And to be fair, technology has definitely helped that. Just to be fair in this whole thing, right?
To be fair to Hal Lindsey, and that's all right. We can definitely throw a sop to the computer industry.
Yeah, I mean, without the computers or even without search engines, our research would move at a snail's pace, and that's how it used to work. I remember sitting next to a guy from BibleWorks software, and he was telling me how he did a search for a graduate student of the Bible, and she said, "Hey, can you just pop in these different search parameters?" He does it, and she looks at the screen that there's the answer in front of her, and she starts to cry, and he's like, "What's going on?" She's like, "That took me 6 months of research to find that, and you did it in less than a second." So that is the kind of power that we're talking about. So we are very grateful to the technology, but your point here is well taken, that it's not just knowledge in general, but it's knowledge of the book, and that knowledge of the book will increase, and people are going to be searching frantically through it. And indeed, that is what is happening, is that because we have access to the book, because we have software, etc., and we just have Bibles in general. I mean, I have a whole row back here of just Bibles, right? Which I rarely ever use because I use my computer, right?
But it is very impressive with that background there you got.
Well, thank you. That's why I did it. Yeah.
I wish I had a background there. You notice my background is a staircase. Why? It's that ladder to heaven.
It's a good start, man. So, but what this means though is that we're going to be looking in the book, scrutinizing it in ways that we've never done before, and we're going to say, "Oh, aha!" Right now, things are starting to come together. And again, the technology has helped us, connect a lot of these dots, because we can go through this book so quickly. We can search it. We can say, "Wait a second, same word here, same word there, same word there."
Yes.
It's all right in front of us. We don't have to guess about these things. We can know some things with absolute certainty. So it's been very exciting. Doug, I want to just thank you for coming on, man. This has been really awesome. We're going to have you on again in the very near future. But again, everybody, if you haven't gotten Chad Schaefer's and Doug Krieger's book, Egypt, the world in the bondage of under the bondage of Egypt.
Bondage of Egypt, yeah.
Yeah, that you can get that
You can
on
get it
Amazon.
Amazon.
Yep, Amazon and other locations. So check that out. Really a very compelling thesis. Chad was on a little while ago. Unfortunately, we had some audio issues on his end, and so that was unfortunate. We're going to try to get him and Doug Krieger back on to talk about the book in more depth, because there's a lot more that can be said about that. We've talked about the two houses. All right, this is something that's new, pretty new for both of us.
Yes.
Within the last couple years, where it's really transformed our understanding of the end times, of the relationship of the Gentiles and the Jews, and even who we are. Okay, and our basic conclusion is that we're Ephraim, right? Whether we have a little piece of DNA in us from that tribe or not, it doesn't really matter, right? Because the bottom line is that we're coming in by faith, and just like the mixed multitude back in Egypt, right? They got to be fully integrated into the nation of Israel, even though by blood they had no relation, but because they believed, they were integrated. And some of those who were blood, like Korah, who were genetically of the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were expelled because they didn't believe. Okay, so please don't misunderstand this. Again, neither Doug nor this Doug, we're not teaching British Israelism. We're not teaching that it's just a genetic thing. We think the genetics have a part, but they're not the overriding issue. It's your faith in God and your willingness to be part of this covenant that he has established. And one other last thing is that the first covenant was a marriage covenant between God and Israel. Israel obviously broke that. It ended in divorce, separation, and sending away from the house. But God said, I will bring you back, O house of Israel, is what he said very clearly.
The 10 lost tribes, so-called.
Yes. The 10 lost tribes, that's right. Who we understand are basically scattered, and we're it. Okay, so he's bringing them back through this new covenant. So we believe in the new covenant. We're not going back to the old covenant. We believe in the new covenant. All right, the new covenant is where God says he'll put his Torah on our hearts and in our minds, and we'll walk in it and do it. And really, that's just kind of the bottom line. It's about faith. It's about just walking in purity, walking in holiness, and really walking in just faith and simplicity with our God. He's awesome. Amen. And we're just so grateful for who he is. So Doug, thank you again for coming on. We'll get you on in the very near future. Next time we have another exciting guest. We have Gary Wayne coming on. He's going to share with us the Genesis 6 conspiracy. So that's definitely a fun topic. So, and everybody stay, just keep in mind that we are going to have a conference this summer. We've not picked the actual date yet, but we're going to have a conference here in Denver. So we hope you can come. You can join us. We're going to have seating will be limited, but we will also have online. So if you want to join us that way for the live stream, we'll be doing that. Details will be coming, so keep that in mind. And it's going to be about the fullness of the Gentiles. So we're excited about that.
Come in, yes.
Yes. So everyone, God bless you. Stay in the Word. Okay. Knowledge will increase, but only when you read the Bible. Okay. So
that's right. Amen.
That's right. All right. So anyway, God bless you all. Take care.